The group moved cautiously through the rubble-strewn streets, the orange glow of their torches flickering in the early evening gloom. Jagged, skeletal remains of once great buildings loomed on either side, their crumbling facades hollow and broken from decades of neglect. Nature had long since started reclaiming the city, with vines and roots creeping through cracked concrete and shattered windows. But here and there, an occasional sign of the ancients' craftsmanship endured. Ahead of them, a towering building stood largely intact, an anomaly in the cityscape of decay. Its wide warehouse-like structure was still mostly whole, its roof seemingly untouched, and the faded sign out front, though damaged, was mostly readable. Hall Sup. "This has to be it," Vance muttered, eyeing the entrance with growing suspicion. "Supplies, just like the last tip said." "Looks too good to be true," Mara whispered, her eyes scanning the darkened windows above. "Nothing's stayed this intact since the collapse. What if there's something dangerous in there?" "We're out of food, out of meds, and we're burning through our last batteries," Toby chimed in, shifting his torch to get a better grip on his crowbar. "We can't pass this up. It's either we check it out or risk starving before we find anything else." Vance nodded, his jaw tight. "Keep your eyes open. No one lets their guard down, no matter what we find inside. Understood?" The others murmured in agreement, though their nervousness was apparent. They had scavenged dozens of ruins before, empty malls, deserted factories, abandoned homes. But nothing like this. This place stood almost untouched, too well preserved. But desperation pushed them forward, and they stepped toward the wide double doors of the building. The doors creaked ominously as Vance forced them open, revealing a cavernous interior shrouded in darkness. Only their torches broke through the void, casting jittery light across rows of shelves and strange, bulky objects looming in the distance. "Looks like a storage depot," Vance observed, scanning the nearest shelves. Plastic bins lined them, filled with colorful objects, unfamiliar masks and strange, hollow-eyed faces, all decayed beyond use. What the hell did they keep here? Toby stepped closer, frowning. "This stuff's weird. Like, I don't know, fake?" "Who knows what the ancients considered valuable," Mara said, sliding past them. "We need to check the back. If this is some kind of supply warehouse, they might have stored food or tools deeper inside." As they pushed further into the building, the unsettling quiet gnawed at them. Things were too clean, the air too still, as if something had maintained the place long after humanity had fallen. Every step echoed ominously through the cavernous aisles, and soon the flickering torchlight revealed bizarre shapes hanging from the ceiling. Hulking, vaguely humanoid figures draped in faded cloth, their features exaggerated and grotesque. "What are those?" asked Mara, her voice laced with unease. Before anyone could answer, a low, mechanical growl rumbled from somewhere deeper in the building. The group froze. "Did you hear that?" Toby whispered, his grip tightening on his crowbar. "Stay close," Vance commanded, motioning for them to move toward the source of the sound. They crept forward, torches flickering with every cautious step. Suddenly, something massive stirred in the shadows, its eyes, two glowing predatory orbs, flashing to life. The creature stepped into the dim light, towering over them with shaggy fur, bared fangs, and a hulking frame that screamed of danger. Vance's breath caught in his throat as the monster lunged forward, emitting a deafening roar. The sound vibrated through the walls, shaking dust loose from the rafters above. Mara stumbled back, raising her spear defensively. "What the—" Before she could finish, the creature stopped, mere feet from them, its limbs creaking as it froze in place. It stared down at the group, its jaws snapping shut with a menacing click, but it didn't attack. For several agonizing seconds, the hairy beast held its position, looming over them, its growl echoing in the silence. Then, without warning, it slunk back into the shadows, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. What was that?" Toby asked, his voice trembling. "It didn't try to hurt us," Vance muttered, his mind racing. "It could have killed us, but it didn't." "It was some kind of machine," Mara said, glancing at the shadows where the machine had retreated. "Like a guardian, maybe? Ancient tech that's still functioning." "But why would they build something like that?" Toby asked, his fear turning to confusion. Vance glanced around, his eyes narrowing as he took in the strange decorations, the grotesque mannequins, and the eerie figures lining the aisles. "I don't know, but if it's this well protected, there's got to be something valuable here. Let's keep moving." The group pressed forward, their nerves on edge. Every corner seemed to harbor more strange and unsettling figures, grimacing skeletons, old gnarled women with black cloaks and tall pointy hats stirring large black pots, and oversized bats hanging from the ceiling. The wolf monster's presence lingered in their minds, a reminder that they were not alone in this place. As they passed another darkened aisle, the creature reappeared. It moved silently this time, stalking them from the shadows, its glowing eyes watching their every move. Mara spotted it first, her breath hitching as she raised her torch to illuminate its figure. The creature didn't roar this time. It simply followed, prowling just beyond the edge of the light. "It's following us," Mara whispered, gripping her spear tighter. "It's guarding something," Vance replied, "but it's not attacking, just testing us." "More like stalking us," Toby said. "I've seen animals do that when they're after some prey, like a wolf." The group exchanged uneasy glances. Whatever this place was, it wasn't just some abandoned warehouse. The machines here seemed to operate with a purpose, though what it was no one could say. Yet the machine's presence, moving with intelligence, with awareness, only deepened their fear. But they had no choice. Their supplies were running low, and the promise of scavenging something useful outweighed their terror of the unknown. So they pressed on, past the flickering eyes, the eerie displays, and the ever-watching humanoid wolf machine that followed, just out of reach. Something valuable had to be here, some treasure the ancients had deemed worth protecting, and the group was determined to find it. But none of them could shake the growing fear that these machines weren't just protecting supplies. They were playing a game, a deadly, twisted game the group didn't yet understand. The group crept toward the end of the aisle, their torches casting shadows against the towering shelves. The wolf machine hadn't made another move since it last revealed itself, and now they had lost sight of it. They hoped it would stay that way, but the tension in the air was palpable. Every corner of this place felt wrong, alive in a way they couldn't fully comprehend. Just as Vance was about to signal for them to turn the corner, the air split with a deafening roar from above. The giant fur-covered machine dropped from the ceiling, crashing into the ground right in front of them with a thundering boom. The floor cracked and shook beneath the impact. The creature's glowing eyes bore into them as it reared up on its hind legs, its jaws snapping viciously just inches from Mara's face. She stumbled back, her heart pounding in her chest as the beast swiped a massive clawed paw at her, missing by the slimmest of margins. "Back! Get back!" Vance shouted, raising his machete, but his voice was drowned out by another roar, louder and more violent than before. The wolf machine wasn't holding back this time. Its movements were faster, more deliberate, like it had seen enough of them, and now it was time to remove the threat. The claws missed by fractions of an inch, and its jaws snapped so close to Vance's face that he nearly lost his nose. He lashed out with his blade, striking one of its legs with a metallic clang, but the monstrosity didn't even flinch. The group's composure crumbled under the intensity of the attack. Mara turned and bolted, her instincts overriding any semblance of strategy. She ran toward the back of the building, her torch waving wildly in her hand as she fled. "Mara, wait!" Toby called, but his words fell on deaf ears. She sprinted around the corner, but her foot caught on something, ropes strung up in a tangled mess between the shelves. She crashed to the floor, her torch slipping from her grasp and rolling away, its flames sputtering as it landed in a pile of debris. but it wasn't just ropes. The dim light from her fallen torch revealed the glistening strands that covered the space around her, thick and strange-looking, stretching from shelf to shelf. Her eyes widened in horror as the truth hit her. "Mara, get out of there!" Vance shouted, running after her, but it was too late. A massive mechanical spider, its body bristling with metallic spines and glowing red eyes, skittered into view. It moved with terrifying speed, its legs tapping against the ground with precision as it advanced on Mara. Its mandibles clacked menacingly, and its body twitched with smooth, lifelike movements. Mara struggled to free herself from the web, a primal fear gripping her. Like many, she hated spiders, even the small ones. This massive spider machine was a whole nother level. "No, no, no!" she gasped, pulling desperately at the ropes. But she was trapped, and panic stopped her from methodically untangling the strands that wrapped around her. The spider moved closer, its red eyes gleaming as it sized her up. The clicking of its mandibles grew louder as it loomed over her, the shadow of its massive body blocking out the light from her fallen torch. Vance and Toby arrived just in time, weapons raised. Without hesitation, Vance charged at the spider, swinging his machete at its legs. "Get away from her!" he roared, slashing at the creature with all his strength. The spider dodged the blow with unnerving grace, its body shifting to the side with mechanical precision. It spun around, lashing out with one of its legs to parry Vance's next strike. The force of the impact nearly knocked him off balance, but he held his ground, gritting his teeth as he prepared to strike again. Toby circled around, trying to get a clear shot with his spear. He lunged forward, aiming for the spider's abdomen, but the creature was too fast. It skittered back, dodging the blow, and then lunged forward again, forcing Toby to jump out of the way. "This thing's learning how we fight!" Toby shouted, fear edging into his voice. "It's not just a machine," Vance growled, slashing at one of the spider's legs, the blade connecting, sending sparks flying, but the creature barely reacted. It pulled back, its mandibles clicking furiously, and circled around for another attack. Mara, still tangled in the web, struggled to free herself. "Hurry!" she gasped, her voice tight with panic. Vance and Toby pressed the attack, striking at the spider from different angles, but the creature seemed to anticipate their every move. It dodged and parried with mechanical precision, its red eyes gleaming as it waited for the perfect moment to strike back. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Toby saw an opening. He thrust his spear forward, aiming for one of the spider's joints, but as he did, the creature's leg lashed out, deflecting the strike. The spear was knocked aside, the sharp edge grazing Toby's leg as it swung past. He yelped in pain, stumbling back as blood began to trickle from the wound. "It got me!" he gasped, clutching his leg. Vance growled in frustration, lunging forward with a desperate strike. His machete sliced through a joint on one of the spider's legs, severing it. The creature screeched, a high-pitched metallic wail, and skittered away, retreating into the darkness. The group stood panting, the silence that followed heavy and oppressive. Vance rushed to Mara, quickly cutting through the ropes that had trapped her. "You okay?" he asked, pulling her to her feet. Mara nodded, though her eyes were still wide with fear. "Yeah, I think so." Toby limped over, his face pale as he examined the cut on his leg. "That thing, it attacked me. These things aren't just trying to scare us. They're really going after us now." Vance wiped the sweat from his brow, his expression grim. "If they're guarding this place that hard, there's got to be something valuable inside. Machines don't just scare people for fun. They're protecting something important." "We need to keep moving," Mara said, her voice shaky but determined. "We'll rest once we find whatever it is they're hiding." With Toby limping beside them, the group pressed on, their fear now mixed with a growing certainty that they were getting closer to something valuable, something worth fighting these terrifying machines for. The group emerged from the tight aisles into a vast, open section of the strange building. Their torches flickered against the darkness, revealing a large black pot in the center of the room. Suddenly it roared to life, green light flooding the space as thick, glowing smoke billowed up from its depths. The eerie sight sent a shiver down their spines, and before they could react, a piercing, high-pitched cackle echoed from above. "What now?" Toby whispered, his grip tightening on his spear. Before anyone could respond, a dark shape hurtled toward them, swooping low. It was some sort of mechanical flying woman on a broom, her eyes glowing bright red. It flew down with terrifying speed, her twisted face leering as her broomstick skimmed their heads. Vance dove to the side, barely avoiding her as she pulled up at the last second, cackling maniacally as she ascended into the rafters. "Watch out!" Mara shouted, stumbling back as the flying machine made another pass, this time grazing her torch. The broomstick whipped through the air, carrying the cackling woman back around for another attack. "We need to bring her down!" Vance yelled, positioning himself near the black pot. "She's going to keep coming until she gets one of us." But as the scavengers tried to track the flying machine's movements, a familiar growl rumbled behind them. The wolf machine had returned, stepping from the shadows with glowing eyes and bared fangs. Beside it, the clicking sound of mechanical legs announced the spider's presence as it skittered into view, its mandibles snapping in anticipation. "We can't handle all three of them," Toby gasped, limping as he moved toward the others. Mara spun around, trying to keep an eye on both the wolf machine and the flying crone. "We don't have a choice." The three machines pressed in, working together in a way that was disturbingly coordinated. The hairy beast machine lunged, forcing Vance and Mara to dodge to the side, while the spider scuttled toward Toby, its legs moving with a horrifying grace. The old woman circled overhead, preparing to dive again, her laughter filling the cavernous space. "We need to get all of them in one place," Vance shouted, parrying a furry swipe with his machete. His arm vibrated from the force of the blow, but he held firm. "Mara, get to that pot! Use it!" Mara's eyes darted toward the black shape, an idea sparking in her mind. She grabbed a nearby crate and shoved it toward the pot, then turned and shouted to Toby, "Get behind it! We'll lure them in!" The crone swooped again, this time aiming straight for Mara. She barely managed to duck in time, the wind from the broomstick whipping through her hair as the machine woman cackled overhead. The beast man machine snarled and charged, but Vance blocked its path, slashing at it with his machete, though each strike only seemed to enrage the creature. Toby, standing behind the pot, threw his spear. The makeshift weapon hurtled through the air and struck the flying crone's broom, knocking it off balance. She let out a shriek as her trajectory wobbled, careening wildly as she struggled to maintain control. Vance, seizing the moment, kicked over another crate. "Now! Attack!" The screeching crone crashed into the ground, her broom sparking as she collided with the beast and spider, sending the three machines into a tangle of limbs and gears. There were sparks, and an acrid smell filled the air. The scavengers didn't hesitate. They attacked in unison, taking advantage of the seemingly weakened creatures. Vance's machete cleaved into the machine wolf's neck, severing wires. Mara stabbed at the spider's joints, her spear finding purchase. Toby limped forward and swung a heavy pipe at the woman, cracking her broomstick in half and sending more sparks flying. Whatever enabled that thing to fly seemed to be in the broom, which definitely looked broken now. The machines had fallen silent. There were no more glowing eyes, the spider's legs weren't twitching, and the crone's eerie cackling had ceased. The only sound was the group's ragged breathing and the soft sigh of air. Are they done?" Mara asked, lowering her spear cautiously. Vance stepped back from the pile of defeated machines, wiping sweat from his brow. "Yeah, I think so, unless there are more of them." Toby, wincing from his leg wound, nodded toward the back of the room. "There's something over there. Look!" They turned to see a door tucked into the far wall, its surface pristine compared to the rest of the place. A metal sign hung on it, the letters spelling out, "Control Room." Vance limped over, motioning for Mara to help pry it open. The door groaned as they forced it open, revealing a room filled with ancient tech and a wall of switches and knobs. Lights blinked softly, displaying readings from systems they couldn't begin to understand. "This must be it," Vance muttered, eyeing the controls. His fingers hovered over the buttons, hesitating. If we can figure this out, we can shut down everything. Mara pointed to a large red button, clearly labeled Master Shutdown. Try this. Vance nodded and pressed the button. Instantly, the whole place went dark. The mechanical hum that had filled the space cutting out. The green light from the black pot faded, and the air went still. A silence, heavier than before, settled over the building. They stood in the darkness for a moment, letting the reality sink in. It wasn't what we expected, Mara said, her voice soft but full of relief. But we're still standing. Vance nodded. And this place, it's ours now. We can make this work. We could learn to use these machines, get them to guard the entrance for real. We've got shelter and protection here, and something must have been keeping this place running, so there's power as well. Toby, sitting down to rest his injured leg, reached into a nearby orange bucket and pulled out a vacuum-sealed packet. I think we might have food as well. He tore it open, revealing a pile of perfectly preserved hard candy. Trick or treat, he said, reading the writing on the bucket. He tossed some packets to the others. Vance unwrapped a piece and popped it into his mouth. Then he chuckled as he looked around at their new home. The ancients sure knew how to build things that last. They sat down, sharing the sweets. Whatever this place had been, its forgotten legacy lingered, and their mood lifted. The future might be uncertain, but they had found a refuge, a place to regroup and even rebuild. And as they sat there, savoring their unexpected treasures, plans began to take shape. Thanks for listening and watching. This is Tales from the Post-Apocalypse, and obviously, the warehouse was full of Halloween supplies. I like to think of it as a place that maybe even had programmed systems where people could battle as sort of a virtual reality, except not virtual, but, fighting like they're reliving their, what's it called, LARPing, right? And the machines are still functioning. It's got solar power, whatever, keeping it going. And the machines weren't supposed to kill the humans, and so that's why the spider retreated when Toby got wounded, because they're supposed to scare, not damage. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the background. Hope you enjoyed that. More to come. Happy Halloweening, and we've got a few more weeks before it's officially trick or treat. Take care, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.